We are so excited to launch our second episode of Come On, Let's Hear It. We are your hosts, Emerson and Ammanu. In episode one, we talked about our hearing loss journeys and how it shaped us to be the people we are today. Throughout the episode, we emphasize the important authenticity, sharing your story, and the importance of community. I'm proud to say that we are building a community here, regardless of where we are. We are here to support you. One of the ways that we are building community is that we're hosting a retreat in June for our young adults. To find out more, click the link in our bio and follow us on Instagram. Let's jump right in. For this episode, we are bringing in a guest, Emma, who is a 2025 LOFTee graduate and has bilateral hearing loss. She is here to join Ammanu and I on a topic that a lot of us can relate on. We'll be discussing how we advocate for ourselves in an everyday medical setting, such as going to the doctor's office, the dentist, etc. We're going to share our experiences and tips with you. Full disclosure that this is what works for us and all of our experiences are different. Emma, would you like to introduce yourself?
So hi, my name's Emma. So I first got involved in Loft. First originally actually did Leap during COVID when I was younger. So my mom found that program for me, and I remember me and my brother tried it out, and it was literally life changing because I have never been able to talk with that many kids that related to me at once. And then later on, when my brother went to high school, my mom found the law program for him and he applied and he got in. So we ended up going to that and he really enjoyed it. He came back, he told me the stories, and I was so excited to be able to go. And then this past summer, me and my brother applied and I got in. So I got to go this past summer and it was amazing. I mean, just being able to be in a like area with people who understand you and no, they're not going to think twice when you ask them to repeat yourself. It was life changing.
Well, I'm so happy that you got to experience it, especially with your brother, because I'm sure not a lot of people get to do that together. So I really loved seeing you two together at Loft because I was there. And so seeing Thomas come back again and then bringing you there with him, I thought that was so adorable. So, thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and we will be diving into a great conversation, and Emma will be sharing her personal experiences as well. So, this episode reflects personal experience and is not medical advice. All of us have one thing in common. We're all deaf and we wear cochlear implants. When we are going to an appointment, we need to pay attention to where our names get called, dealing with masks, and engaging in multiple conversations with professionals. It is not an easy task, but when we advocate for ourselves, it can be a little bit easier. Although not everything will be smooth for us, and that's why we are here to talk about it. So, Emma, we'll start with you. Can you share a moment in a medical setting where you realized, oh, I need to advocate for myself here? And then what did you do?
Yeah, so actually recently I had a situation like that. And it was in me needing to get an MRI. And as like growing up, my parents always told me, you have implants, you can never get an MRI. And then I ended up being in a situation where I had to get where I was going to need an MRI to really get diagnosis. So a little background is that in the first week of January of this year, I hurt my knee playing a basketball game really bad. I mean, I was carried off the court and my parents took me straight to urgent care. And then I ended up going to urgent care and all they could tell me that is my knee wasn't broken and to just go to my primary. So I had to wait, I believe, like over the weekend to be able to go until I was able to go to my primary. Then when I went to my primary, all they could say is, we can't do anything until you get an MRI. And that's when I realized, I have implants. How am I supposed to do this? So that's when the journey began. I just like trying to find a way to get an MRI. So me and my mom, we had to do research into how I can get an MRI since all I knew was no MRI because with the magnets inside, my mom always told me like, no MRI. But we had to find a way to get one. So me and my mom did research and we found that you can, if you have an MRI kit, which is like the bandage that goes around your head, and you have like the correct type of MRI machine, like the right strength MRI machine, then you're able to take an MRI. So we ended up calling multiple facilities. I believe like after 2 weeks after my injury, we had ended up calling like four medical facilities, some as far as like 4 hours away, and no facility was able to accommodate. And it was just really frustrating because this whole time I was in a brace and I was on crutches and I couldn't do anything. It was really frustrating. And then was it 4 weeks later? Thanks to my trainer, my athletic trainer, Miss Davis, I was finally able to get an appointment with an orthopedic doctor, and that's where I was finally able to like go into a doctor, get a diagnosis. So I went to the ortho. He said that I'm gonna need the MRI, and then that's when I had to tell him, I have cochlear implants. I can't have the MRI unless I have a specific MRI kit, and it's because my implants are the internal components of my implants are older. They're like a decade old, so they're not compatible with an MRI. And he had never had a patient before who had cochlear implants and needed an MRI. And that was the same with my whole like medical like facilities around us, because my town's like, it's not small, but it's not one of the major cities. So it was still a struggle because we still had to, tell him like everything we had found so far about the MRI kit and about like the places we had already called. So from there, my orthopedic doctor, all he told me was just to start physical therapy, get in contact with an ENT, because the ENT is the one who has to the ENT is an ear, nose, throat doctor. And the ENT is the one who has to order the wrap from Cochlear. They have to receive it and they have to like apply it. So with the actually doing the MRI was going to be this whole process of scheduling with an ENT and an MRI facility to have the ENT appointment where they apply the wrap, and then I go over to the MRI facility, I get the MRI, and then I go back to an ENT and get it unwrapped. So it was going to be this almost impossible to schedule like scenario. So that was like another thing that was extremely difficult if I even was able to get that MRI kit. And my ortho also told me just to wait it out to see what happens. But thankfully, I was able to recover without the MRI, because the MRI would have told me if I needed surgery if it was so severe. But enough time passed where just doing physical therapy got me better. And it's something I'm still working on to this day, working on rebuilding my strength in that leg.
Wow.
That
That's,
sounds.
you can go, Bonnie.
Oh no, no, that
Interesting
that just
reaction.
sounds. Yeah, I mean that sounds extremely complicated. And a very, I imagine, frustrating situation to go through because I'm a former athlete. Like, I mean, I still play soccer these days, but I used to like really get get into playing, and I'd play at a very high level. And fortunately, I never got hurt enough to the point where I needed an MRI, so I never came across this issue. But my G, I'm sure glad I didn't, because that sounds like a pain in the butt. So, but credit to you. It seems like you and your mom did the right things. You talked to the right people. You did your research. You handled what you could, and you made the best out of the situation. So that's just what I was going to say.
I was also wondering, with getting an MRI and all that, do you feel like if the injury was so much more severe, what would you have done? Would you have continued to call all these facilities and get the NT more involved with this? What would you have done? Because I'm thinking of myself, and I used to play sports when I was a kid, and I never really knew about the fact that you couldn't get an MRI with an implant until I was much older, so after I was done with sports. But I didn't realize how complicated this was going to be, especially when our internal parts are so old that they're not compatible. But I know that if they have the newer ones, I'm sure they would be compatible. So I'm sure there's a lot to weigh in here.
Yeah, so all of that definitely played a part. I say if my injury was more severe, then we would have just had to keep reaching out. We most likely would have looked into medical facilities like in San Francisco or LA, like the bigger cities that would be more equipped to handle it. And I say specifically for me, I did have an option for different imaging because I have I have a friend who also wears cochlear implants. And a while ago, she had injured her ACL. So I asked her, like, what type of imaging she got. She told me she was actually able to get, like, a CAT scan with contrast. So I ended up asking my orthopedic doctor about that, but he said with my injury, that wasn't specifically what they were looking for. And he said that that wouldn't work for the type of injury they were looking for in my knee. But I would say definitely for other imaging options, it definitely made me more aware that like in case anything happens to me, like hopefully not, obviously, but if anything happened to me, I need the people around me to know
Mhm.
like what my internal components are and what I need in order to get the proper medical care. Especially since I'm a recent driver, I just started driving and made me realize I need to let the people around me know. So
Mhm.
in case I get an accident, I even got like a medical bracelet. So in case of an accident, they can contact my parents and they can tell them, oh, if she needs an MRI, try to get that MRI kit or use a different type of imaging.
Yeah.
It
Well,
sounds like you guys went through a lot with just trying to figure out one solution. And that really tells the story of I advocated and I advocated hard because you knew what you needed and you did what you could. And I know that probably wasn't the outcome you wanted, that you wanted to get that exact answer, but I'm glad that it worked out in your favor where the physical therapy and just working on regaining the strength on your knee, that there is a positive outcome for this, but not that's not necessarily the case for everybody.
yeah, I agree. Just to echo that, I think there's something to be learned from this experience. And and it leads me to actually ask you, how do you think going to Loft maybe helped prepare you for this? Because like I think if for me, if I was in your shoes before I even learned about what it meant to really advocate for myself from people who had been there and done that, then I would have been kind of stuck in the weeds. So how do you like have you reflected at all on how Loft maybe helped you?
Well, I think Loft definitely helped me in just teaching me that I need to advocate, like to use my voice and just to keep asking questions until I get somewhere. And it
Hmm.
definitely gave me like resources. I actually texted the our Loft group chat from the past year to see if anyone had a similar experience. Unfortunately, no one had, but it was a nice question to, be able to go back and ask them.
Hmm.
I think it definitely helped me. Like I mentioned, I ended up asking a friend of mine who also wears two cochlear implants because she was in a similar spot too. So I was able to ask her. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't like hesitant to ask the deaf people I know. I was
Right.
able to, and that love definitely helped me with that.
That's awesome.
I love that you utilized your resources that weren't in the medical field. You were asking people who may or may not have had that similar experience. And for me, I look back of all the times that I had to advocate for myself in medical settings. I know this is not entirely related to getting an MRI, but I am type 1 diabetic, so I'm always at the doctor's and I'm always having to go and get all these blood tests done and having to make sure that I'm in good health and going to all these other different doctors. But the one thing I can pinpoint is when masks came into effect. And I'm sure you guys can relate, but I remember thinking to myself, well, I don't know if they would feel comfortable with putting their mask down because they're working in a space where there are germs and sickness coming in and out the doors. And I thankfully were working with people who I've been seeing for a long time. So they understood that I had hearing loss. So they would take down their masks. Obviously, this is during COVID that we would sit so far apart. And then once COVID phased out, then it was still going in the hospitals and all that. And I remember when I moved and I needed to get new primary care, they didn't know who I was and I didn't know them. So that also meant, okay, they don't know me like I have known my other doctors because I moved. And so I remember going into a new primary and thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know how they're going to take it. But again, they're medical professionals. But I'm always in my head about that. But asking, I just said, I have hearing loss. I need to lip read. Are you okay if you can just take off your mask? You don't have to be near me, but you can have a distance. And
Hmm.
they said, yeah, of course. And they even asked me, oh, what kind of hearing loss do you have? And what's your story? And what do you wear? Because not all of them are aware of hearing aids and cochlear implants. So I got to use that as a teachable moment. And what you had said, you were not afraid. And I wanted to say for the people out there, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself in medical settings. You know yourself better than anybody. They're here to help you, they're here to assist you. They're not here to say, well, why would you need that? You can always say, I need this because there's always ways to say it without feeling like I don't want to seem rude or I don't want to seem like I'm asking for too much. And what we all have to deal with is that it's just a simple ask. That's really all it is. And
Sure.
with these masks, um, I tried and I wanted to be respectful, but it will come to a point where I want to make sure I understand what's going on. So
Hmm.
let's say they ask me to go see a different doctor for something else, or they need me to come back in 3 months. I need to
Hmm.
know so that nothing's getting lost in the conversation. Ammanu, what about you? Did you ever have to advocate for yourself in a medical setting, and what did you do?
For sure, yeah. I think more recently, I definitely had to advocate for myself in a medical setting. I think very similar to you, where I mean, it was after COVID. It was actually probably like 2 or 3 months ago. Um, I went to an ENT doctor that wasn't my like cochlear ENT doctor. It was actually somebody who had specialization with sleep apnea and like the nose. Um, and he was wearing a mask the entire time of our appointment. And I had asked him, "Hey, like you're speaking very softly, even under a mask. It makes it even more difficult for me to hear." And so he pulled it down for like a couple of minutes, and then he walked out of the room to do something, came back, and the mask was back up, and he didn't put it back down. And I was like, "Am I really gonna have to ask again?" And I was just like, "I don't even know if I'm ever gonna see this guy again." Because it was a referral from my primary care physician for something. And so I didn't bother. And at that point, sometimes you have to recognize when is it worth your energy? That's also the deal. So, um, yeah, it can definitely be frustrating and challenging in certain situations, especially like when it comes to getting your name called, for example, and not missing that. That can be stressful. But I think what happens is in medical settings, I don't know what it is, but sometimes it feels so high stakes. Like you build it up to where it's just so intense. And I think it's because it can be very silent in there. It's not like a social environment. It's not, it's just things are just like nobody's chill. Everybody's on edge. So I think that also plays into my head. I don't know if it does for y'all too, but yeah, what do you guys think about that? Like, do you think there's something to be said about medical settings being different when it comes to advocating for yourself versus like maybe a restaurant when you're with friends or at school with teachers, like how wh- do you guys see the difference there?
I mean, I can definitely agree on the name calling when
Hmm.
you're in an office. It is literally the most stressful thing ever, and it seems so small to stress over that. But my fear is that they'll call my name and I didn't know, and then I miss my appointment, and then they're gonna ask, "Where were you?"
Right.
That is my biggest fear because it's always a routine for me. So what I do is I always sit where the door is, where I can see them and see the person walking out and just being on edge. Just like, okay, are they going to call my name? I don't even bring out my phone. I don't even do anything. I just sit there and wait patiently, hoping, okay, are they going to call my name? Are they not going to call my name?
Right.
And the nice thing is that they do come out, somebody will come out, but there are times where some of them have accents or really soft voices that
Hmm.
I have no idea if they're calling my name. Somebody when I was somewhere at a doctor's office, they called me by my last name, and I thought it was somebody, there were other people in the room. So I'm thinking, is there someone else with my last name here? And then I realized, oh, it's me. And then it made it even more confusing. But I can definitely agree that it is different in a medical setting versus a social setting. I agree with you saying it feels tense because it's silent and it's not a
Hmm.
social situation. And then you're also trying to figure out, okay, there's people talking in the hallways. Are they going to come in? Because most of the time when I go, the door's always shut. So when I am just waiting, after they have called me in, the doors are always closed. And the one thing that I always have to make sure is when they knock, and they knock super silently and
Hmm.
softly, and it doesn't sound like there's a knock. They just go like
Yeah.
that. And then sometimes I think, oh, I think that's the person next door, or something made a sound in here. It's them
Right.
at the door. And sometimes they'll knock and say, Emerson, are you
Hmm.
ready? Or something like that. And I just have to be hyper aware. And I wish that I didn't have to be so hyper aware, but it's the fear of missing the information. It's the fear of, oh my gosh, they're going to charge me for a no-show, even though I'm here. Thankfully, the no-show fee has not happened. If I don't hear my name, sometimes I'll go to the front desk and ask. So, Emma, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, medical settings, you just feel like on alert. You always scanning around. I know for me, like I'm younger, I'm not in like waiting rooms. I always like pretend to look at my phone, but I always have like the
Hmm.
volume down and I'll be like scanning the room when somebody walks in. So it's definitely like I've like built it into a habit to always just scan the room whenever I'm waiting to go in because I'm like walking for I'm not I'm looking for someone to like walk out and like announce something or someone with a clipboard and I'm always like scanning for that.
Hmm.
I know, especially with the knocking, it's like so like when they walk out, you're always thinking, okay, when are they gonna come back? Because they're sitting there, you're waiting. It's like, was that the knock, or did I miss it? It always makes you second think.
What I do is if I doubt it at all, I say come in. Like if I even if I think it's, you know, but if there's any chance that it's a doctor knocking on the door, I'm okay with embarrassing myself a little bit to myself because I'm who's there watching, um, and saying come in. But yeah,
I
it's
think it's different, the transition when you have your parent with you because you're under 18 and then now you're over 18 and now you're the one who has to do all these things by yourself now. Because when I was little, I relied on my mom to do that, to
same.
be the ear for me, essentially. And then when I started getting older and started going to these appointments on my own, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, now I have to be even more aware. And I think that definitely helped me feel more independent and feel ready to do these things on my own because, again, my mom and dad can't hold my hand forever and do everything for me. I have to then establish that independency for myself. So then, once I was over 18 and when I went off to college, I started doing it more and more. And then I was more comfortable going to these appointments by myself because when I first started, I was a little hesitant.
Hmm.
And then I kept thinking, okay, I'm adulting. And then it really wasn't so bad. And so I had to rely on myself and also just be aware of my surroundings at the doctor's office or the dentist's office or whatever it may be. It's not that scary. It is not. Even though you might think it is, it's not.
Yeah, I say definitely me being like younger. I'm not 18 yet, so my mom always comes to my appointments, and which I'm thankful for because without her, I probably would miss like half my appointments. But
Hmm.
always one of the first things like she does or I'll do when the doctor walks in is like as soon as they step a foot in, she, will say, you know, I'm a, well, my mom will say it for me, but I'm doing better. I'm learning to do it on my own
Hmm.
now. But my mom will say, Emma's deaf, hard of hearing to risk cochlear implants. Can you speak up, or can you speak up and face her when you talk? Because doctors are always look walking around doing something and trying to talk to you. So just doing that alone, just introducing yourself and letting them know when they come in, it
Mhm.
helps a lot. So then they're not, wandering off, walking out while saying something or, doing something at the same. It definitely helps a lot just being the first one to like be out there and say it.
Oh, absolutely. And I have always wondered, um, do you feel like you ever had a time where you didn't advocate for yourself or you didn't explain what your hearing loss is and then you kind of had to overcompensate for that?
I don't really feel like I have a huge moment like that because like growing up, I was really my parents always drilled it into me like you have to advocate for yourself, you need to ask. Like, my parents, my DHH teachers, like, what is advocate? What is it? What is it? What do you do? But I feel one of the more recent moments was when I first started physical therapy at my first appointment. I had kind of, I don't know, what do you call it? Like the diagnose, like they see where you're at. My and I had told the person like not diagnosing, but like checking me in that I'm deaf, hard of hearing, so can you speak up or face her when you talk? So he had told that, and I'm pretty sure they ended up putting it in like my chart. So then the next day not the next day, but later that week when I came into the appointment, the the doctor or the physical therapist came out and she talked in this really loud voice. She's like, "Hi, Emma, I'm here." She was like she was overcompensating. So at first I was like, who's gonna tell her I can like because she was talking pretty loud and she was like really focusing on each word and I was like, so it's kind of like that awkward moment is like, do I tell her that she doesn't have to talk that way? So it's like that moment. I was like, what do I do? But I ended up not saying anything, but eventually I think she figured it out. But that was,
I mean, that is a good note to say that they can put it on your chart or your portal if they're accessing it through online or paper, that there should be a note. And if there isn't, you can say, I have hearing loss, I have cochlear implants, I can hear, I can speak. I just need you to be patient. If I need to ask you to repeat words for me, don't talk too fast, face me, all these things that you can tell them. When I moved, when I got to my new primary and my endocrinologist, it never was noticeable that I had hearing loss. And so when they had to make my portal, they asked, well, have you had surgery? And I said, yes, I had bilateral cochlear implant surgeries. And they're like, what? Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, I had no idea. And I said, yeah, I have two, and they're great. And I just ask you to face me and just talk to me as if I'm just somebody who you're having a conversation with. And thankfully, they were all really understanding and were really intrigued by it. And I don't really think I ever had a moment where there was a time where I was like, oh, I should have advocated myself. I feel pretty confident that I will advocate for myself in these situations or my mom before I was 18, that we were both very on top of things and making sure that we had X, Y, and Z. So I never really felt the need to say, no, I want this instead of that, or I didn't hear that. Can you repeat it again? Usually I'm able to keep up with the conversation. But again, it's not the case for everybody. Everyone experiences differently, and everybody is seen by different people. And some might know what hearing loss is and know what cochlear implants are, know what hearing aids are, know what BAHAs are. But I see this as an opportunity to say, oh, it's this really cool technology and it does this and it does that, and then say all the cool features. I told my primary, I said, oh, yeah, I can Bluetooth music into my ears and
Mhm.
nobody would know. And she was like, really? I go,
Mhm.
yeah, it's actually really cool. And she goes, so if somebody's trying to talk to you, they have no idea that you're listening to music and just random people that pass you by. I go, no, they have no idea. I think the one that gives them the look of what is going on is when I'm on the phone because it connects to my ears. So it looks like I'm talking to myself or I'm just talking to just somebody that's not even existing. That's
Mhm.
when I will get weird looks. But I just think,
Yeah.
okay, I have this unique thing and you don't.
This may be unrelated to the topic of this episode, but that is a blessing and a curse, the fact that you can use it as a Bluetooth device because sometimes at work I'll be like listening to a podcast or like I don't know, listening to music and one of my coworkers will walk in and just start talking to me and I had to like awkwardly like lean down to my phone and press the pause button and it's just like well, I don't want to be rude and just be like, wait, let me pause you for a second and turn this off. I like to do it discreetly, but yeah.
It is such a cool feature. So that's what I'll use when I meet a new doctor or somebody new. That's usually
Hmm.
what I'll tell them. And they're all over it. And I tell people I see it as a superpower. It's a
Yeah,
good superpower to have.
Hmm.
I know. I end up getting carried away with it because I'll be walking around my house, watch my show, and I will like stream to both because you almost get it feels like a movie theater experience when you have them
Hmm.
on both. I'll be walking, I'll be like head down looking at my phone, and then my mom or my dad would be like, "Hey, can you go take out the trash?" or "Can you put dishes away?" And then like later on in the day, they'll be like, "You never put the dishes." I was like, "You never asked me to do that." And they're like, "Yes, you did." I was like, "What?" So it always ends up being like, "Oh, you told me to do something, but I was listening." It just it's a downside, but it's honestly it's worth it. I mean, the streaming it's like one of the coolest things about them.
Oh, yeah, it is such a cool thing. And I think when it comes, you mentioned earlier that when you're in the waiting room, what are you going to do when you are going to these appointments on your own and you're watching something on your phone and you're in the waiting room? Because I know you said that's what you do. I think that's something you're going to have to not do as much.
Yeah. So normally what I do, like so for me, I go to my physical therapy appointments alone. So what I'll do is since I don't want to seem like I'm just sitting there and just like, looking around all nervous, I'll end up just putting like I'll open up like TikTok, I'll turn the volume all the way down, I'll just scroll and then like every couple seconds I'll like look up and make sure I didn't miss anything. So I'm figuring it out, but I'm finding a system that kind of works for me right now.
Yeah. Well, that's something that we didn't have. Amani and I didn't have Bluetooth when we were younger. And so we wish we did because that would have made a huge difference for everything. But again, with these devices, the technology gets better and better and better. So do you feel like the cochlear implants and medical science, do you think that's just going to improve within the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Yes, I remember being a kid and finally I had the N6 for what felt like forever, and then I finally got the N7s, and then they were doing the whole debrief. She was like, all the things you can do, and then she says, "Oh, it has Bluetooth," and I like stopped dead in my tracks, like, Bluetooth?
Yeah.
Because as a kid with the implants, you always have to find like a way to listen without blasting it out. So I'd always like had headphones and be wearing them all sideways, trying to get them to work. So, and also even the feature of like turning that blinking light off, so it's not always on. As a kid, that was literally life changing because I would always play hide and seek with my cousins. I remember I'd be hiding somewhere dark and I'd be like covering the lights. I'm like, I really hope it doesn't give me away. So like I remember finding out you can like control all of that. That was like mind blowing. Like even the app being able to adjust like the level you hear it at, so you're not always hearing all this everything really loud. So like if you're in a crowd or a concert, you can turn it down. I mean, I keep saying this, but I really want them to make cochlear implants where the magnet like doubles as a charger. So like how the Apple,
Oh,
you have like the mag, like you just stick it on. I keep
Yeah.
saying I want that because instead you can just like take it off, stick it on something and it charges. Because the amount of times I've forgotten to charge my batteries, it's just
that
That's
is
genius.
really interesting.
That's smart. I think the setting you're talking about on the app where you can tune out the background noise is called forward focus. And I only knew about this like until like 2 or 3 months ago, even though I've had the sevens since I was like a freshman in high school. And that has been like honestly life changing when I go out to eat and like, you know, am in a loud restaurant or if I'm at a party, turning that setting on has been hugely helpful. So I highly recommend to any of our listeners, if you have not taken advantage of that, please do. And you wear the nuclear sevens. Yeah, for sure.
That's good to know. I had no idea. But this brought me to my next question. I just thought of this. Would you think having a cart transcriber there at the appointment, similar to how an ASL interpreter works, that we would have a cart transcriber, do you feel like that would change the accessibility in the medical settings?
so I actually have some familiar I've used Scarp before. I used it in middle school for captioning, and I ended up stopped using it just because I didn't like how bulky it ended up being. But this is kind of like relating to the technology of things. I recently, say a couple months ago, I got the new iPhone 17. I was playing with the accessibility settings, and they have a live trans like captioning setting. So I remember being like super excited when I found out about that because it was just this little button I could press on my phone, and then it would transcribe everything I heard. So it give me like built-in captions on my phone, which is really cool because especially when it comes with that and the live listening, it definitely can help a lot at the doctor's appointments or like just any other setting where you feel you may want to look back or it's going to be hard to understand.
Yeah, there are so many great apps that you can use for captioning, and even the iPhone will have features on captioning that you can bring to the appointments and use them pretty much anywhere, which is great because I know that sometimes I wish I just had a cart transcriber there where I can just read everything and just have it there so that I know exactly what they're saying, and that will probably help with any miscommunication. But I think that's a great tool to have, and that's a tool that we can use as we move on. But I really just want to see more of that accessibility in the offices, whether even if it's just a small thing, I would love to see that, or even, have a ticket number and then they put on the screen and say, okay,
Hmm.
number 15. Oh, I have 15, I'll come in. Something
Hmm.
like that just to just make it a little bit better and not feel so tense.
Yeah.
Yeah. To kind of tag off like the accessibility things, I know like movies will have like the captioning glasses and I know sometimes they do work, but other times they just aren't up to date and they just don't work well. So that can end up being frustrating because they have the system to help, it's just not working well. And similar to this, I this past year I went to a Broadway play for a school field trip, and for the accessibility, I was going to see what they had, and they had like the microphone, like their own headset, and like this captioning, almost like website, like app you can use to help follow along. But it was frustrating because it wouldn't work. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind is that they might have what like the accessibility, but it may not work well.
Yeah. No, it's a shame because I think we're at a stage now where technology is like rapidly advancing and there's not really many excuses for having, I don't know, poorly operating accessibility devices. So, or clapping devices or anything that kind of helps with accessibility. So I'm really just hoping in the next five years we can see some rapid advancements in both medical settings, but also in the other like everyday settings that we were a part of. Yeah.
I was wondering, Emma, what advice do you have for people who are experiencing the similar situation that you were in, or who just are experiencing a hard time of advocating for themselves and they just want somebody to listen to them? What would you want to tell them?
Well, I'd say specifically for just like in medical settings, it's really helpful if you know your implants. So, like knowing what cochlea you have, and especially knowing your internal components. Because I know the newer models, they'll have the newer models like from these past just few years, they are MRI compatible, where you wouldn't need a head wrap or anything, and you'd be able to just get the MRI. But it's kind of funny because my brother has an older one and the newer one. So he has one that's not compatible and one that is. So it's
Oh,
kind of ironic. But I say definitely just keep asking, keep looking, because you just, where you'll find, you're eventually going to find yourself in a situation where you're going to have no other option but to get like the imaging you need. So you just need to keep asking questions. And unfortunately, it is a hard process and it is frustrating, but you just have to keep asking and just reaching out to people. I think definitely reaching out to like Loft and other deaf people I knew helped me like understand like things I can ask for and other possibilities.
absolutely. And I would also want to add on top of that, that it's okay to ask for these certain things because I don't want people to feel like, well, what if they don't want to help me? Or what if I feel like it's too much? Or maybe I will be better off without it. It is okay to ask. It is okay to say, I need this. How can I get this? And even if they're not the right person to help you, it's possible that you can ask, can you give me a suggested person for this? And if you want to have practice, practice with your parents. Just do a
Mhm.
little bit of role play and make up some scenarios and figure out, okay, what would I say in this situation? What would I not say in this situation? Practice, even if it sounds silly, it goes a long way. And do what Emma did. If you have friends who are deaf and hard of hearing, ask them. Just say, hey, did you ever experience this? And if you
Mhm.
did, what would you have for me? What can I learn from it? And also, it's okay to ask for help. Even if you are over 18, you can go to your mom and dad or your grandparents or whoever you're living with and just say, hey, I need help. How can we figure this out? Because nothing is ever out there. You can get the help, you can get what you need to make you healthy and everything. So, really take that jump. It might be scary, but once you start doing it more, it's going to be super easy.
Agreed. Yeah, our health is not to be played with. I think it's the arguably the most important thing, and you owe it to yourself to take care of it and protect it, and that comes from pushing for what you need and want. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I would say just keep asking. I mean, the worst thing they can say is no, and then you can just ask someone else to just don't stop asking. Just keep going.
Absolutely. I
For
agree.
sure. Well, today's conversation is a reminder that advocating for yourself is not being difficult. It's actually about recognizing that you deserve equitable, respectful care. And navigating medical spaces as a young adult who's deaf or hard of hearing can feel overwhelming at times. But your voice matters and your needs are valid. We also hope this episode reminds you that you're not alone in these experiences. When we share our stories openly, we create spaces for others to feel seen, understood, and supported. If something resonates with you, we invite you to continue the conversation with our community because together our voices are stronger. Until next time, come on, let's hear it.